It does not happen all at once. That is what makes it so difficult to catch. One day, the debt is a problem, a number, a pressure, something to be solved. And then, slowly, without a clear moment you can point to, it becomes something else. It becomes a presence. It moves into the background of everything. Behind the ordinary conversations, behind the public smile, behind the quiet of a room that does not feel quiet anymore. It begins arriving at night before the body is ready to sleep, and it is still there in the morning before the day is properly begun. At some point, the debt stops being something a person has and starts being something a person carries, inside, in the thoughts, in the way they look at themselves, in the way they respond to the people they love, in the way they pray or stop praying, or kneel without being able to find any silence inside themselves. By the time most people recognize that debt has left the financial column and entered the soul, the damage is already layered and deep. 6 mistakes make that damage worse. The last one may be the most dangerous of all, and you may recognize yourself in it before the video is finished. The first mistake does not feel like a mistake. It feels like dignity. When debt begins to close in, when the numbers become uncomfortable and the margin disappears, the instinct to protect yourself from the judgment of others is entirely human. Pull back. Smile less. Offer fewer details. Be present enough not to raise concern, but distant enough that no one can see clearly. Carry it alone, because carrying it alone feels like being strong. But shame is not strength. Shame is a jailer that never announces itself as one. Every relationship avoided while debt grows is a hand that cannot be extended in the right direction. Every conversation about money that is redirected or buried is a piece of wisdom that cannot reach someone who needs it. Every night spent in private humiliation is a night that community, counsel, or even the gentle honesty of one trusted person could have changed. The enemy does not need dramatic destruction when quiet isolation will accomplish the same result over more time. Secrecy is how small burdens become unbearable ones. And what a person refuses to bring into the light cannot be reached by anything that heals. The first mistake is hiding. The second mistake arrives when the hiding becomes unbearable enough that a person feels they must do something, anything, right now. Debt pressure creates a very specific kind of urgency. It is the urgency of someone who is drowning and willing to grab onto anything that looks like it floats, without stopping to check whether it will actually hold their weight. Borrowing more to cover what is already owed. Making a promise they are not sure they can keep, because promising feels better than admitting the truth. Selling something essential in a moment of panic to create breathing room that disappears within a week. Rushing into a decision that seems like action but is really just pain wearing the costume of a plan. These decisions are not made by foolish people. They are made by people who are suffering, who need relief, and who have confused the feeling of doing something with the reality of solving something. Wisdom counts the cost before moving. Scripture is consistent about this. The builder does not lay a foundation without first sitting down and calculating whether the project can be completed. The general does not send soldiers into battle without first assessing what stands against him. This is not timidity. It is the intelligence that knows the difference between a decision that reduces pressure today and one that builds a way out tomorrow. Panic feels like urgency. Wisdom feels slower, and the slower choice almost always is the one that makes a real difference. The third mistake is the one that takes the longest to recognize because it does not feel like a mistake about money at all. Listen to how the internal voice changes when debt becomes constant. In the beginning, the voice says, "I have a problem," and that is accurate. It is external. It is situational. It is something that can in principle be addressed. But under sustained pressure, that voice shifts. It starts saying, "I am the problem." And that shift changes everything. The person who believes debt is a circumstance they are navigating fights differently than the person who believes debt is a verdict about who they are. The person who carries debt without letting it define them can still make clear-eyed decisions, still reach for help without shame, still believe that the situation will not always be what it is today. The person who has merged their identity with their financial failure has quietly stopped fighting for themselves because some part of them believes they are only getting what they deserve. Debt is a circumstance. It is a number. It exists on paper and in systems. It does not exist in the place where a person's worth was established, and that place has no balance sheet. The weight of what you owe was never designed to answer the question of who you are. But when debt is allowed to speak to identity long enough, it begins to answer questions it was never qualified to address. And then it does something even more damaging. It starts speaking outward, into the relationships around the person carrying it. Most people will not see this fourth mistake in themselves at first. They will see it in the people they love, in how those people respond to them, in the new distance in a conversation, in the tension that appears when money comes up and did not used to, in the way a partner looks at them with something that was not there before. Financial pressure, held inside without honest expression, does not stay inside, it radiates. It comes out as impatience with people who deserve patience. It comes out as bitterness toward people whose ease feels like an accusation. It comes out as a tightening of generosity, of openness, of the kind of emotional availability that relationships require to remain healthy. A person crushed under debt who becomes controlling, short-tempered, or closed is not failing morally. They are failing to address what the pressure is doing to their interior life, and the interior life does not stay contained. It shapes everything it touches. The dinner table, the bedroom, the friendships, the way a parent speaks to a child when the account balance is already low. Guard your heart, not as a defense against the world, but as a discipline against what sustained fear can do to the person you are becoming. Because the fifth mistake shows what happens when that guarding is given up entirely, one sleepless night at a time. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that belongs only to people who have spent long nights doing mathematics in their head. The numbers arranged in different orders, hoping a new sequence might produce a different answer. The scenario run forward. What if the payment is late? What if the hours get cut? What if the car breaks down? And run again and run again. Each time producing a new anxiety that demands its own calculation. The mind working so hard in the dark that the body cannot rest, and the morning comes with the weight of a night that provided no answers and removed no debt. This is what worry looks like in the life of someone carrying financial pressure. And worry, in its quiet way, insists it is being responsible. It says, if I stop thinking about this, something will go wrong. If I stop running the numbers, I will miss something. The thinking feels productive even when it produces nothing but more fear. Do not worry about tomorrow. That is not a dismissal of real problems. It is a diagnosis of what worry actually accomplishes, and a redirection toward where weight was meant to be placed. Cast your cares on Him. Prayer, in the language of debt pressure, is not the absence of action. It is the act of refusing to carry alone what was never designed for one person's mind to hold overnight. Worry does not reduce debt. It only increases the cost of carrying it. The sixth and final mistake is the one that makes everything else harder to escape. And it sounds on the surface like the most reasonable belief of all. It sounds like hope, but it is a particular kind of hope that keeps people in a waiting room they were never meant to live in. When this debt is gone, I will be okay. When the number reaches zero, I will finally be able to breathe. When the pressure lifts, I will have peace. I will trust again. I will be the person I was before all of this started. Everything is suspended in the space between now and the moment the debt disappears, and that suspension is its own kind of captivity. Because peace that can only exist after a specific number changes is not peace. It is a hostage being held by a circumstance. Because the person waiting to begin living fully again is losing the only time in which living fully is actually possible. Because God may be doing something significant in the pressure, building patience, exposing pride, creating an honesty and prayer that comfortable seasons never produced. And the fixation on escape can make a person too restless to receive what the season was sent to develop. This does not mean the debt should not be addressed. It must be. But the inner life, the peace, the trust, the identity, the compassion, the faith cannot wait for the debt to disappear before it is rebuilt. Because the person who emerges from debt having only escaped it, without being changed by it, will often recreate the same conditions again. Sometimes the invitation hidden inside the pressure is not just to get out. It is to be transformed while still inside. 6 warnings, and the pattern beneath all of them is the same. Do not hide. Do not panic. Do not let debt speak for your worth. Do not let the pressure make you cold. Do not surrender your prayer life to rumination. And do not suspend your life, your peace, your growth, your trust in God until the debt is resolved. Because that resolution may arrive to a person who has not yet done the inner work that makes it last. Debt at its most destructive does not destroy bank accounts. It destroys the interior life of the person carrying it, piece by piece, silently, in ways that never show up on a financial statement. The answer is not a method. It is not a product. It is a posture. honest, humble, connected to community rather than isolated from it, willing to move slowly with wisdom rather than quickly from panic, rooted in an identity that exists entirely outside of what is owed, open-hearted enough to stay soft when pressure wants to harden everything, and trusting, truly trusting, that the God who knows the number of your debts also knows the number of your days and has not handed the outcome of either one to a credit balance. The debt on the paper may have an end date, but the person you are becoming while you carry it, that will outlast every number you have ever owed.